So Bill, let's go ahead and transition now into kind of what's happening with the housing market. So obviously you're a man, you own a seven-figure flipping and wholesaling business, which that tells me that you're dealing with hundreds and thousands of houses, properties, real estate assets every single day, every single month, every single year. What are your overall thoughts on what's happening with the housing market?
Well, I'd say today, right now, the housing market is probably one of the best that I've ever seen from my angle. If I was a real estate agent, I'd probably be giving you a different story. So as a realtor, there's just not a lot of inventory that's coming on the market, right? But as a flipper, that helps us a ton. So for us, like we are having trouble getting our houses. Our houses are getting bid up, and we're having trouble getting appraisals to hit the numbers that we need and things like that. But for every house, what's interesting that I've noticed is these houses are coming off the market, right? There's still a demand for people that are moving. And although it might not be as high as it was in like the summer months that we typically see, it's still really high. And in fact, most people have been pushed back into their house and they hate it. Like there's no office. They're starting to realize that their home is their sanctuary. And because of that, they're realizing that they either need to upgrade, they need to downgrade, they need a classroom for their kids, right? So all this stuff is changing right now. So we're seeing a huge influx of buyers. And for us, it's currently it's really, really good. Like I wish that I had 100 more houses that were fixed up, that were vacant, that we could put on the market today. We'd be cleaning up. So as a flipper, like a investor, it's great.
Yeah. So, it is phenomenal for you, right? Because the houses are getting bid up, the values are going up, they're flying off the shelves as they so to speak. But do you think that's sustainable? Do you think that's going to continue to happen, for years to come? Or do you think we're going to see something else post election, perhaps even the beginning of 2021? How long do you foresee this going for?
Yeah, no, I don't think it's going to happen forever. I would say the big thing that like we're talking about in the flipping community is we want to get in and out as fast as we can right now because there is definitely a lot of uncertainty. And the interesting thing for me right now is like what's adding to all of that. So there's a lot of factors that I look at that hopefully we spend some time getting into because there's a lot of things that you want to look at as you go forward. As a there's people that can't pay their mortgage right now. There's landlords that can't evict people that want to evict. There's people not paying their rent. There's people. It's almost like there are a lot of people that are directly affected by this right now, but we haven't exactly realized it yet, is the way that I feel. Like it's this wave that is coming. We're just kind of like timing when it's going to start unfolding because the government is still kind of kicking the can down the road and bailing us out with money that we don't actually have, like our own money, right? So, and there's still a lot of uncertainty there. They keep kind of kicking this new stimulus package down the road too. So like I'm watching all of that stuff, watching evictions, watching the forbearance issue, watching the stimulus packages, all of this stuff. And as I watch that, I start thinking, okay, not just how is this going to affect me right now, but how is it going to affect me in the next 3 to 6 months? Because as a flipper, I really operate in a microclimate, right? I want to be in and out in 6 months. So max, like I really want to be in and out in 3. And so a lot of what we're doing is short timelines. And so what I start looking at is more like longer term things, like what are the new opportunities that are coming up? That's the biggest thing for me because I'm not just looking at disposing of these properties, moving them out the back door, because right now we know that's really good. So what I now need to look at is supply for my company, right? Like how do we find these opportunities and how do we get there before other people start realizing that there is an opportunity there? So I realize I'm talking in generalities here, but I think as you look at the ecosystem that you live in, whether you're a landlord, whether you're a flipper, a wholesaler, apartment investor, Airbnbs, you're doing whatever, maybe you're building new construction houses. You got to look at that ecosystem and say, where's the supply and demand? And like, what does it look like for my business and what opportunities are going to present themselves down the road? So, I mean, I think my crystal ball has cracks in it like a lot of people do, but I'd say down the road, I think we're going to see some cooling off of the market. And then if like distressed sales are really what drive the housing prices, like if we start seeing a ton of foreclosures and it's easier to find properties and there's a lot of distressed sales that are going and being listed and selling on the market, then what that's going to do is it's going to allow more supply. And then our fixed up nice houses aren't going to be as attractive and they're going to start kind of maintaining their price or going down. And so as I watch for that, that's what I'm going to say is going to drive my my buying criteria and things like that.
Oh, hey, what's up, guys? Danny V here. If you don't think the Kwak Brothers are absolute savants, then you gotta change your perspective. So like this video and subscribe to their channel. Don't you wanna be happy?
So that's just like one of the metrics that I look at. And, but there's still a housing shortage. Like the fact that there's a housing shortage means there's a big demand for houses right now.
Yeah.
For every house that goes off the market in our cities, like everybody's a little bit different, but we have flippers all around the country that are feeding us information and data on a regular basis. About a half a house replaces it. So when we're already in like a low, like 3-month supply, 2-month supply, when one house gets sold and only a half a house replaces it, that's just a recipe for high prices and demand. And so the next piece is interest rates. As we start seeing interest rates go up, if interest rates go up to 5%, a $300,000 house that you buy right now at 3% interest and a $240,000 house that you buy at 5% interest has the same payment.
Yeah.
So, I mean, people that are looking at that going, like, why would I wait to buy a house? I can buy one right now and have the same payment that I would have, even if the market does go down. If I'm going to live there for 10 years, then I'll buy a house right now. Why would I wait? Let me move into my dream house today and lock it in.
Yeah.
So I said a lot there, but I can dive in deeper because I'm really passionate about this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we want you to dive deeper, right? This is really the platform for us to discuss and have real talk. So it seems that you and I and a lot of people are in agreement that, this market cannot sustain itself. Eventually, we're going to have some sort of a correction, regardless of what size that correction is. But what are your plans? Where do you see the opportunities happening when that correction, when that downturn does occur?
So I'll tell you what I'm going to do is I'm not going to wait for it to occur. So like right now, we're trying to figure out what the next thing is going to be. So let's rewind. If we go back to the 2008 time, and you could say that basically the problem that we had there was nobody would believe that housing prices were going to go down. Like we were all just in awe of housing and said they only dropped the rate. The values only dropped by like 1 to 1.5% per month. So something like that. There's some places that were more affected in the 2s, but pretty much like 1% per month. So can you imagine right now that if the home values only dropped by 1% a month and I was a flipper and that's 12% over this year? Like when we look back, it's like, how could you have a problem dropping your price and keeping up to that? It was the fact that nobody believed that it was actually happening when you were living in it, right? And so now at least we have that history. We understand that housing prices actually do decrease. We lived through it. It wasn't like it was 20, 30 years before where we never lived through it. We actually lived through it. A lot of people got hurt through it and they remember it and they're still in pain from it. So now we're a little bit more cautious. The interesting thing that I would say is that if you could go back to that time in 2008 and say, I'm going to learn short sales before anybody else learned a short sale, like you would have cleaned up. So just imagine before people were selling the courses on like short sales and doing them and everybody's cleaning up on doing short sales and foreclosures. You figured out that could potentially be the next thing. And you started learning it and understanding it and studying it. And then you were the first person over there. You could take the lion's share of that market before anybody came over, right? And eventually it just got kind of saturated and people kind of moved to the next thing. So what I'm trying to do right now is I'm trying to figure out what could the potential opportunities be going forward? And then how do we educate ourselves and build the foundation before anybody else does and maybe get a list or get into a certain area for those opportunities. And so a couple of them that I look at are evictions. I think evictions could be pretty bad. Like if landlords have their hands tied behind their back and they just can't evict people for a long period of time, this could be the next almost like a short sale opportunity that landlords just don't want to deal with evicting a tenant that's not going to pay and they don't know how much longer it's going to be, but they want to cash out their equity from this house and go do something else with it. And if that's the case, then maybe we could buy at a discount as a wholesaler or a flipper and keep that person in there for a while or use some sort of strategy to get them out if like legally, right? Maybe we pay them to come out or something like that. And we figure that game out. And because there's potentially going to be this huge backlog of evictions based on that going forward. So that's one thing that I'm looking at. The other one is the forbearance issue, the fact that people aren't paying their mortgage. So what if I could get a list of not pre-foreclosures, but people who are not paying their mortgage right now and start marketing directly to them and say, because the majority of Americans right now, they don't have money in their bank account. So if they're not paying their mortgage right now, they're probably not taking their mortgage payment and putting it in another account that's just there, waiting for them to pay their mortgage when they finally do say, hey, you owe us $14,000. And let's just assume they don't put it on the back of their mortgage payment, right?
Yeah.
And so we don't know what's going to happen. So they don't have the money, but they have equity. So we can start working maybe some subject to the existing mortgage deals. We can start maybe buying their houses at a discount to get them out of that. Maybe they aren't able to pay their taxes too. All these things. The tenants that are currently not paying their rent definitely aren't putting their money aside into a separate account to pay their landlord, and they owe that money to their landlord. The landlord's not going to tack it on to the end of their rent, right? So there's a lot of different things that are going on here. So we're thinking, like, if I can get a list of people who aren't paying their mortgage right now, and so we're working on that. I've got a marketing guy who is like a genius on that. And I said, look, go figure out if you can get a list of people who are currently in forbearance, like they're not paying their mortgage every month. And if we can get that, then we can start marketing to them and being the first people who do. So there's a couple things that I'm potentially looking at as we go forward. And I think it's just trying to see around the corner a little bit. Like what is the next strategy before it gets there? Because we always wait till we're there. And if we can get creative and figure out, like, how can we get there first, or build out the structure, or the system, or the foundation ahead of time, I want to do that. So there is one stat that I pulled that I think is really, really telling of what's happening right now. And like, we talk about futures a lot, but when you build new construction houses, so when the people are building new houses, they're like 12 to 24 months, like a year and a half, 2 years, sometimes 3 to 5 years. You're building out a subdivision. And that's one of the numbers that we're looking at too, is how many new construction starts are happening. So how many new builders are building right now. And that just came out for August on September 17th. And what it showed was in August, they're down about 5%. So when new construction starts are down, that's the builders betting on the future 1 year to 2 years. So as you start seeing that come down, in about 2010, we saw this boom of we saw this big gap of no building, right? People were just afraid of the future. And then we saw the boom of new construction. I live here in Nashville, and they're building everywhere. I mean, every piece of land is being built on right now. And so when I started seeing that start to dip, that's people saying that, hey, I know that there's a housing shortage, but I'm not willing to bet on the next year or 2 years. So that tells me a lot about the microclimate that I live in, the short term of, hey, we got to start thinking about what this might look like going forward. And I think deals will be a little bit easier to find, which is good for us. We might not have to spend as much on marketing. And going forward, that 5% drop that we just saw could also potentially be based on material costs. Material costs have been going up like crazy too. So the mom and pop builder might not want to pay, twice as much for lumber and plywood and stuff like that than they had to before. They might just be waiting for that. So just all these things, I would challenge everybody to start thinking like big picture and then bring it down to where you are, to say you can make money in an up market, a down market, and a flat market. You just have to know how and where the opportunity is going to come. So.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. And I love that you brought up, it could be the cost of supplies. It could be the cost of lumber. I mean, I think I think you said it in passing, but I think it actually is the double, right? It's double the price of what it usually was. I mean, if you're looking at year over year. So I'll ask a question that I get a lot, and I'm sure you get a lot. What do you foresee happening in the real estate market and the housing market? Let's say the next 3 to 6 months. What do you foresee? And it sounds like you've already made some moves. You're already, implementing some capital towards preparing for what is to come. But what do you foresee happening 3 to 6 months? And what should an average investor, maybe somebody who's not at your level, maybe somebody who's doing 1 or 2 deals a year, or they're just starting out, what action steps would you recommend for those individuals?
So I would say in the next 3 to 6 months, it's probably going to be kind of what we see right now, assuming that the government doesn't do something wild. Like, I think we're going to be, it might cool off a bit. You might see prices level out or go down a little bit through the wintertime, because the wintertime is always a little bit of a slowdown in the real estate market. The interesting thing that we saw, though, is that we lost the summer selling season. So the summer selling season almost didn't exist. So the amount of houses that came on the market just weren't there. But usually people just kind of lock in the winter. We have trouble doing a lot of business in the winter just because people aren't reading our postcards and not wanting to move and all those things in the colder areas. And so what I would say is I would just adjust my buying criteria a little bit, add yourself in a little bit of cushion. And if you're flipping houses, like in my world, then get in and out as fast as you can, just like, and watch it. And so I would, build in a couple percent, maybe 5 or 7% contingency buffer there, and just keep looking for good deals. And don't overextend yourself, don't overbuy. And what I will tell you is get really, really good at raising capital. Like get really good at raising money, because when the rates go up, when the opportunities are out there, when distress starts hitting the market, capital starts getting pumped in. There's a lot of capital on the sideline right now. It starts getting pumped into the marketplace. People start buying these kind of distressed properties, but banks kind of start drying up on a little bit more of the lending side of things. So if you're really good at raising money, then money will never be an issue of why you can't buy when the opportunities do come. So that's a big thing that I'll push for everybody that's listening. So if I was a newer investor, I'd probably take a lot of this time to start building the foundation and like to learn what I need to do, and always be looking for deals, like just making offers, but build in a margin. Like don't push, don't go bid up with all the other experienced people that don't need to make money right now or need to make thin margins. Don't get caught up in the game of monopoly, basically, right? So everybody else that's playing big. So hopefully that helps. I'd say just don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to make an offer, and don't be afraid to go at it. I know people that have been waiting since the last election to buy, and they're still waiting and sitting on the sidelines. So I've made millions of dollars since then. You can make millions of dollars in this market, in any market. So it's possible.
Yeah, I love that. And, for individuals, for you guys watching, if you want specific steps on how to do that, Bill's got a phenomenal YouTube channel called 7-Figure Flipping, the number 7, the word figure, the word flipping. And we're actually going to leave a link to his channel in our description below. So go ahead and check that out, guys. Bill's got a wealth of knowledge, and, he's been doing this a while, and he's had some phenomenal results. So thank you, Bill, so much for joining us. And again, where can people reach you besides your YouTube channel? Do you have a website? Do you have maybe, an event? Or maybe you can point to your shirt there. You got the shirt that you have on right now.
Yeah, we've got an event called Flip Hacking Live. It's in October. So depending on when you listen to this, October 15th, 16th, and 17th, you can go to fliphackinglive.com and check it out. And the company's called 7-Figure Flipping. We've got podcasts and all kinds of different stuff that we do. So check me out there. And if you want to get on any of our buyers lists, you can just contact me there. We'd love to work with other landlords, flippers, whoever. We wholesale quite a few houses. So love to help.
I love it. Thank you so much, Bill.
Thanks for having me.